Now let's switch gears into the fundamentals. I do want to hit on demographics. And look, I mean, it's hard to argue a demographic call. I mean, these things generally don't work if you have anything less than like a 5-year time frame. But this definitely helped. There was a multiple expander on the upside, from whatever, 2006 through 2012. Now we're just going to see the same thing on the downside. So you take 1 or 2 points of growth away because of a negative demographic trend, you're also going to see the multiple hit. This thing will not test the old multiples again. In fact, I think it's going to have a hard time keeping its existing one. So all of that said, you look at page 11. On the left, here's a U.S. birth growth rate. I mean, we're just had a period where it was actually up quite a bit, and it's a little over 1%, but I mean, that's not huge, but for a demographic group, it actually is kind of big, and it just went negative. And for the next, I think, 3 years, I have a slide later, it should still be negative, though that is harder to forecast than, say, how many baby boomers there might be. If you look actually on the right page of 11, I didn't highlight this, but if you look at, say, 2002, 2003 to 2008, what happened right before we saw the spike in birth rate? That's when Berkshire did its IPO. So they saw this coming. And that's when, again, every hedge fund out there owned it and made a lot of money. You see acquisitions there, or I should say, you see the decline in the birth rate from 08 through 12. Well, that's when they started doing acquisitions at Carter's. And that's when they ran out of growth and they had to be creative. Again, they were creative, and that's great. But I just think that the incremental boost from a creativity standpoint is going to be really expensive. So one thing I'll say, this is on page 12, and this shows you the birth rate trends over time versus imports of baby cotton clothing. All you see is when there's a big shift in the birth rate, I'm not saying that sales go down, I'm not saying sales go up, I'm just saying it gets really volatile. And I think that's what we're going to see incrementally more of in the next 1, 2, 3 years, which probably means more earnings misses, which is probably what we just saw and why we could and should see the same thing again.
How does the demographic call play out or manifest itself in earnings? Is this a short-term headwind or a long-term secular call?
I mean, look, so a demographic call is not going to change overnight, which is why I noted I'm not going to make a call based on demographics. This is one of those things where over a 3-year time frame, it's going to change, like really slow change. But when you do the math, as you did, you can very easily model a 1 or 2% comp headwind. If you get a 1 or 2% comp headwind, you stop beating numbers, you might start missing numbers because you can't flex your fixed costs at that same rate. So you have that dynamic happening while people just know, I mean, it's no secret where the birth rate is going. And as you see a company like this that's missing numbers at a time when you have a declining birth rate, that's a problem. I mean, your multiple will not go up, and it might come down quite a bit. The inverse of that happened when every hedge fund owned it 8 years ago.